I think what you basically need to understand is that lack of self-belief wasn't something you were born with, is something that you develop. And so the first question is to ask yourself is like, when did you stop believing in yourself? And so this could be as simple, it doesn't have to be this gigantic like moment in your life, but it could be something as simple as, failing a test, or a parent telling you that you weren't good enough in some way, shape, or form. Thinking of my own lack of self-belief and where it went out the window was in grade school, where essentially I was probably like ADHD or something like that. And the classroom essentially wasn't for me. And so because of that, I got put into like a special learning program early on in grade school, like in the early grades. And so every day or a couple times a week, I can't remember, I would get pulled out of class to go to like this special learning room. And that's where I started doubting my own ability. I started comparing myself to the people in my class. And from that, unconsciously, I wasn't aware of it, I essentially stopped believing in myself.
Meet David Haas, intuitive healer and transformative guide. After overcoming his own profound challenges, David discovered the power of inner healing. Now, he dedicates his life to helping others break free from addiction, burnout, and emotional pain through personalized one-on-one mentorship, immersive retreat, and transformative programs. David empowers high achievers to reconnect with their true selves and embark on a journey toward lasting well-being.
What's going on, guys? You're listening to the David F. Haas podcast. In this podcast, I'm going to break down the lack of self-belief is probably the thing that is limiting you most, and how to identify it and overcome it. And once you do this, then you can pretty much achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve. And so I kind of broke down these 5 steps that I think are going to really help you identify this lack of confidence, lack of self-belief, and how it keeps showing up in your life. And so, the first step, I think what you basically need to understand is that lack of self-belief wasn't something you were born with, is something that you develop. And so the first question is to ask yourself is like, when did you stop believing in yourself? And so this could be as simple, it doesn't have to be this gigantic like moment in your life, but it could be something as simple as, failing a test, or a parent telling you that you weren't good enough in some way, shape, or form. Thinking of my own lack of self-belief and where it went out the window was in grade school, where essentially I was probably like ADHD or something like that. And the classroom essentially wasn't for me. And so because of that, I got put into like a special learning program early on in grade school, like in the early grades. And so every day or a couple times a week, I can't remember, I would get pulled out of class to go to like this special learning room. And that's where I started doubting my own ability. I started comparing myself to the people in my class. And from that, unconsciously, I wasn't aware of it, I essentially stopped believing in myself. And so the step 1 is to ask yourself that. When did you stop believing in yourself? What happened to you where you stopped believing in yourself? Because as a kid, you're born with all kinds of self-belief. Like if you just think about a kid learning how to walk, it's like that kid continues to believe, and it's all unconscious, that it eventually will walk, and it keeps trying and trying and trying. But somewhere along the way, we develop a lack of self-belief. And I talk a lot about how the ages of 0 to 12 are the most influential. It's because we are taking on programs unconsciously, and those unconscious programs that we take on are usually the most difficult to undo, because 1, we're unconscious of them, and 2, they're pretty much repressed, meaning most of the incidences that created these limiting beliefs were so painful that we shoved them into a deep dark corner that we pretty much forgot about. But the avoidance of feeling that pain, for example, in me would be like the pain of the embarrassment of being the stupid kid in school, was so deep, I shoved it into a corner where I forgot about it. But the avoidance of that pain continued to limit me throughout my entire life. And so if we can identify where we first stopped believing in ourselves, it's just like a great opportunity to, 1, reconnect to the pain that we've been avoiding. So, the pain that I've been avoiding would be the pain of embarrassment, right? The pain of feeling less than my classmates. And so now that I've identified that pain, every time I'm about to make a decision in business or in life, and I recognize the hesitation in me, the self-doubt, the shifting of focus, I connect that to, this is all about not wanting to fail, not wanting to feel less than, not wanting to feel stupid, right? And then I can allow myself to be okay in that pain. And so then this will help us begin to step out of our lack of self-belief. And so the second part of this is we have to identify how our lack of self-belief is showing up for us on a daily basis. And so the way it shows up for me, I'm just going to use my own example, I guess, probably the best way to describe it. The way it'll show up for me is like in self-doubt, where I'm constantly kind of questioning the direction I'm going in with respect to like anything. Like goes into recreation, it goes into business, it goes into relationships. It's like I'm constantly questioning, am I doing things the right way? And then when I hit roadblocks, I also shift focus. And so there's this self-doubt, there's this shifting of of focus. There's this belief in me that something's missing. And so I'm constantly searching for that thing that is missing. And so now that I know that these are my three things, and there's probably more out there, but these are, indecision would be like another one. That would probably be a limitation. Now I know every time those behaviors show up, I can just I can connect them to, this is all connected to my lack of self-belief, which is connected to my not wanting to be embarrassed or feel less than, right? And so as we begin to connect, we begin to take back our power from this thing that we had been unconscious of up until this point. And so the third thing is we want to get in the room with people that are doing the thing that we want to do. So I recently just went to an Alex Hormozi event. There's like 100 people in the room that all paid $5,000 for a 2-day event to be in the room with him. And the part of the reason that I got in that room is because one of my patterns of believing I was missing something, and I believe that Alex Hormozi had it for me, was the reason I signed up for being in that room with him and a whole bunch of other people that also feel like they need more information or need something or they're missing something. The thing that happens from being in the room with people that are doing the thing that it is that you want to do, and you have to make sure that it's like almost uncomfortable to get in that room, if that makes sense. You were like, for example, I had to spend $5,000 and fly to Vegas, and so like that's kind of like uncomfortable to like spend that much money on a 2-day event kind of thing. And so, but once I was in that room, the major recognition and the content was great, and Hormozi's team is amazing at delivering everything, and it was really professional, and the whole thing was awesome. But the biggest takeaway I got from it is that there's nothing special about these people. They're just like me and you. And I've experienced this, multiple times throughout my life. I have a golf membership and I golf with all these people that are well-to-do and they're making a bunch of money, and there's just a recognition that they're just regular people. And so as you get in the room or you're around these people that are doing the thing that you want to do, you'll recognize that they are just like you. And in that recognition, that lack of self-belief kind of begins to go out the window, because you can see that there are people that are just like you. And so if they can do it, why can't you? And so I think getting in the room with people is huge, and you should put yourself into that situation to be around people that are already doing the thing that you want to do. The fourth thing is you want to identify like what the payoff is. So you are getting something from remaining not confident, from remaining in this internal struggle of, am I missing something? And so like when I started reflecting on this, I was like, well, what is it that I'm getting? Well, one is I get to remain in my comfort zone. So that's pretty simple. It's like I'm comfortable where I'm at. I'm comfortable at this certain level of income. I'm comfortable where my relationship is. I'm comfortable where my friendships are at, right? And so if I wanted to go beyond that comfort zone, I would have to believe first and foremost that I could. And so the lack of self-belief keeps me in that comfort zone. And then I would also have to face whatever it is the lack of self-belief is helping me avoid feeling. So if I don't believe in myself, then I never kind of go out and do anything new, or I never go or maybe on the reverse side, I never continue to push to the finish line on the thing that I am doing, because the lack of self-belief will be like, this isn't the right path, and now I'm going to go down a different path. And so the payoff that I get is I get to continue to shift my focus to different things. And so that keeps me in that comfort zone again. I also, by not believing in myself, I get to kind of like pass the blame in some ways. Like it's almost like a victim thing. Like I don't have what it takes, do what it is like a guy like Hormozi's doing. I'm missing something. So I get to pass off that blame. Like Hormozi's doing all this because he has X, Y, and Z, and I do not have that, And for me, it wouldn't be about like the money or the team. It would be about like the intelligence. Like that's what I would think. I'm missing the intelligence to be able to do what it is that he's doing. But then when I'm in a room with him and recognizing that he's a super intelligent guy, but it's just like the recognition that I had was that he wasn't so much his intelligence that allowed him to get to where he is. It was his ability to keep pushing through all of the failures and not get distracted, and pulled away. He just had this unwavering belief in himself, even though sometimes he would feel like he wasn't believing in himself. And then he continued to move forward with that goal, right? And so I think it's just important to identify what we're getting out of remaining in this lack of self-belief. And right, maybe another one would be is like we get to be the person who is constantly questioning or asking or curious. And so in that curiosity, you kind of always remain the kid, if that makes sense. It's like, so if I'm golfing with a guy that's worth $100 million, I get to remain in the curiosity of like, hey, what did you do? Like the number one question that everybody asks successful people is, what do you do? And why do they ask that question? It's almost like they're searching for some magic business that is going to make them successful. And so it's like, I was in this room with all these entrepreneurs, 100 entrepreneurs, and there were people that, everyone in that room was pretty much doing over $2 million a year in sales. And there were people that were doing up to 100 million in sales. And so the one thing that I recognize is that they all had different businesses. There was a guy that was in roofing. He was doing 330 million a year. There was a lawyer, an immigration lawyer that was doing 24 million a year. There was marketing agencies that were doing 3 million a year. There's me with the Lungo Vita, and so it's like everyone has different businesses. There is no magic pill. But when we don't believe in ourselves, or we don't believe that we have what it takes, we remain curious. And in that curiosity, we get to remain the perpetual student. And from that, we kind of like get pat on the back of like, oh, look at this kid or this guy. He wants to learn how to become successful. And so we get to remain below all of these people. And so this perpetuates that lack of self-belief. And so we just want to identify what we're getting out of not believing in ourselves, I guess is what I'm trying to sum that up. And then the fifth point is, which I kind of already touched upon, is we want to identify what the feeling is that the lack of self-belief is helping us avoid. So not believing in yourself doesn't feel good, but that not believing in yourself was a mechanism to protect you from some sort of pain. So up until a certain point, and for me, I'm like, it's pretty clear, it could probably maybe developed earlier. And it's also not important to get to the root. We just want to start asking the question, where did it all go away? And as we identify those moments in time where we didn't believe in ourselves, we will eventually get to the core of this entire thing. It's not necessary, but we eventually will get there, right? But we first have to ask the question, and we have to identify that the lack of self-belief is a major problem for us, and we have to set the intention to want to break free from it. And so as I look at my situation, I say, okay, my lack of self-belief probably developed from early in grade school when I essentially felt like the stupid kid. And so then I began questioning myself in all areas of life. And so that's the mechanism that was created. But why was it created in the first place? It was created to help me avoid the pain of being stupid. It was really like, just to be blunt about it. And so if I was going to put my hand up, this is like a really good example. In class, if you put your hand up to answer a question and you get the question wrong, you feel embarrassed. So now you begin questioning whether you should put your hand up or not. You stop believing in your own ability to get the question right or wrong. And you stop believing, I should say. And so that's essentially what happened to me, is I felt embarrassed, I felt stupid, and I began questioning every single thing that I was doing. And then I started to see that play out now just as I'm tuning into it. It's like I was like this super energetic kid, full of energy, and then people started, making fun of me, let's just say, for being too hyper. And so then I began questioning myself as a person. And so this lack of self-belief continued to perpetuate. And then this is like the sixth piece, which is like the bonus piece of this whole entire thing, is that what you hold in mind, or your level of consciousness, go even deeper. Maybe I'll go into that in part 6/.1 or something like that here in a second. But so the first thing is your lack of self-belief. If you don't believe in yourself, that will continue to be confirmed throughout your life. What you hold in mind tends to manifest. What you believe you can achieve. Whatever slogan you want to put on this thing, it's that if you don't believe in yourself, you will constantly be reminded about how you don't have what it takes. And this is like kind of like what's been showing up for me throughout my whole entire life, right? And it's like, even though I would say from the outside looking in, I have outwardly success, I have a good life, I have a good relationship, but because I'm focused on what I'm missing, that's all I see. And so your reality is your reality. And so in order to shift that reality, we need to first begin looking at the good and stop focusing so much on the bad. So we're looking at all of the good things that are happening in our life, which will then hopefully start to confirm our belief in self, is just by shifting from looking at the bad to shifting to looking at the good, just like through a process of gratitude. The second thing would be to recognize that this holding on to not believing in ourselves has been showing up in a cycle throughout our whole entire lives. And so if you don't believe in yourself, then you'll start a business and it'll fail. If you don't believe in yourself, you'll get into a relationship and it'll fail. If you don't believe in yourself, you'll never feel like you kind of fully get to the finish line on anything. And this will continue to happen because what we hold in mind tends to manifest. So the thing we're thinking about most will continue to show up in our life. So now that you know that, it's pretty important to shift why you don't believe in yourself, right? And so then that gets into the 6.1 of this step 6, which is we have to shift a level of consciousness, right? And so, for example, if we develop the pattern of not believing in ourselves as a tool to avoid the pain of feeling stupid, which would be like to avoid the pain of the opinions of others, we could say also, then from a level of consciousness, we are still trapped at level of consciousness fear, meaning we are fearful of other people's opinions. We are fearful of failure. And so if we can identify that the fear is the thing that we are avoiding most, we then, with that awareness, can have the courage to begin facing our fears. And so with that awareness, we begin to make a shift, an intentional shift towards self-belief. So we've recognized that the lack of self-belief has shown up so that we don't feel the fear of failure. I'm just creating an example here. So now we can say, I want to overcome I have set the intention to overcome my lack of self-belief. So I am going to begin leaning into the fear of failure. And I'm going to do that in two ways. The first is I am going to recognize when lack of self-belief shows up when I'm going towards a new project. And then all my mechanisms to stall show up, where I shift focus. I think of a different idea. I self-doubt. I get trapped in indecision. And I'm going to say, I see you. And this is all about my lack of self-belief, which is all about the fear of failure. Okay. And then in that moment, we can say, can I handle failure? Am I okay in the pain of failure? And we can lean into that pain of failure. The second thing that we're going to do, though, is we are going to reconnect to the pain of failure, let's just say, from that core incident or where it began. And not even if we don't get to the core, whenever you ask yourself the question, where did my self-belief go? Or when did I stop believing in myself? Whatever incident pops into your mind, that's where you start. And so when that incident pops into your mind, you just got to take yourself back there, see yourself either as your adult self standing next to your younger self, or seeing yourself as your younger self, and just ask that younger version of you how you're feeling in that moment. How does it feel? Like, let's use my example. I'm just tuning into it now. It's actually, it's recognizing that the feeling hasn't been dealt with completely because I'm really still fully connecting to it. So it's like, how did it feel when that teacher pulled you out of your classroom? This is my own example, and said, hey, Dave, it's time to come to the stupid class. Right? Like, that's essentially what I was feeling. And I felt like a loser is what I felt like. The whole entire class stopped. This teacher interrupted the whole entire lesson, pulled me out. I get up, give my books, and like literally I can now visualize walking down that hall just feeling like a complete loser. Right? And so that's the feeling I'm avoiding. That's the feeling I'm so scared of reconnecting to. And so we just want to give ourselves a space. We want to give our, I guess I'd probably be like 12, 10, 11 years old there. We want to give ourselves the space. We want to give that 11-year-old the space to feel that embarrassment completely, because that's what I've been avoiding my whole entire life. And so if you combine these two techniques, one with recognizing as you move forward, all of these mechanisms show up and you choose to move forward with courage anyway, recognizing that failure may show up, but you're going to be okay in that failure. Being stupid may show up, but you're going to be okay in that being stupid. So that's step one. And step two would be to go back and reconnect to that pain and allow your younger version of yourself to finally have the space to feel completely, so that the mechanism of lack of self-belief goes away. And if you do this, you'll start believing in yourself naturally. There's nothing you need to add. It just as a natural consequence, you'll find yourself taking more risk. You'll find yourself not questioning yourself as much. You'll find yourself being more focused. You'll find yourself not doubting every single decision you make. And then through that process and through the repetition of kind of confirming that you believe in yourself, then that confidence will expand and it'll allow you to be able to basically do anything that it is that you want to do. And so this is the process that I basically have been using, and kind of going to the Hermosi event was kind of like another piece of that puzzle, because I still had this question in me of like, what is it that I'm missing? Even though it was kind of an unconscious question, but I signed up for that event because I had an unconscious question that I was missing something. And by doing that, that question was answered to me, which is I'm missing nothing. And that was like probably the most empowering thing. I would have paid $10,000. I would have paid $100,000 to have that realization that there's nothing that I'm missing. And so now that I realize that, it's just a matter of choosing a direction and going and being okay in whatever shows up. And so I hope that helped, because I recognize that a lot of people, including myself, are struggling with an internal sense of not being good enough. Right. I think it's like part of all of us. And so if we can bring awareness to that, we can break free from that, and then we become unlimited. If you got any value at all from this podcast, just hit that subscribe button, share it with a friend, or like it so the algorithm shows you more content just like this. Thanks for taking the time to listen. We'll see you again next week.